This is Africa. It is the world's second largest continent after Eurasia. Africa's large variety of landscapes range from tropical forests and vast savannas to the stark expanses of nearly rainless deserts. Parks and nature preserves in these different landscapes protect the largest remaining wildlife populations on Earth. The Sahara, which is the world's largest desert, separates the fertile areas of North Africa from the sub-Saharan region that lies to the south. In spite of its great variety of landscapes, wildlife, and vegetation, Africa is not an easy place to live. It has a short supply of fertile land for such a large area, and parts of the continent are plagued by droughts that may last for years. In addition, it is home to numerous insects, bacteria, and viruses that spread diseases to humans and livestock. Africa stretches approximately 7,700 kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea on the north to its southernmost point near the Cape of Good Hope. The continent is broadest in the north, where a great bulge of land juts westward into the Atlantic Ocean. Much of the Atlantic shoreline has long sandy beaches. In other places, this coast is indented with shallow bays and river mouths where mangroves grow and numerous birds make their homes. On the northeast, Africa is separated from Southwest Asia's Arabian Peninsula by the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Its southeast shores lie along the Indian Ocean. Coral reefs provide homes for colorful fish along this coastline. Beyond the beaches, narrow strips of coastal plain are backed by steep escarpments. An escarpment is a long cliff, or steep slope, that separates two fairly level land areas that have different elevations. These escarpments are the edge of a vast plateau that covers much of the African interior. As you can see from this map, the coastal plain is broadest and the plateau surface is lowest toward the north and west. The plateau rises to higher elevations in the south and east. In parts of southern Africa, the escarpment, which bounds the plateau, drops straight into the sea. Throughout much of the interior of Africa, the plateau surface is nearly flat. In other places, the flatness is broken up by river valleys and low hills, or by outcroppings of hard rocks that have resisted erosion. Some of these rocks are among the oldest on Earth. Africans have mined rich mineral ores from seams in these rocks for many centuries. In the 19th century, deep mines were developed by European colonial powers. For example, this big hole at Kimberley, South Africa, produced more than 14 million carats of diamonds. The mining districts of South Africa still provide much of the gold that reaches world markets each year. Although parts of the African plateau surface are high above sea level, the continent only has a few major mountain ranges. Some of the most important are the Atlas Mountains in North Africa, the Drakensberg in South Africa, and the Ethiopian and East African highlands. Africa's highest mountain is Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. The summit of this extinct volcano rises nearly 5,900 meters above sea level. A great rift valley cuts through the East African highlands. The rift is formed where two continental plates are being pulled apart. Geysers and hot springs show that molten hot rock lies close to the Earth's surface here. Some of the numerous lakes on the valley floor are very salty. Thousands of flamingos feed on the brine shrimp that live in these salty lakes. Africa's major rivers include the Nile, the Senegal, the Niger, the Zaire, and the Zambezi. Because the Senegal River flows across one of Africa's broadest coastal plains, boats can move up this stream for many miles. Most of the other rivers drop from the plateau surface to the coastal plains in a series of rapids and waterfalls. These falls and rapids, called cataracts, limit the transportation of goods and people from the sea to the interior. However, the rivers are important for local transportation on the plateau surface above the rapids. The Niger River in West Africa spreads out about halfway along its course into a broad flat area that is known as the Inland Delta. When water levels are high, boats can travel the Niger to Timbuktu, a city in Mali on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert. Other trading centers, such as Jenny and Mopti, also lie along the Niger's inland delta. Many of Africa's smaller rivers are dry, except when it rains. Water from several African rivers never reaches the sea. Instead, the water collects in shallow interior basins where it evaporates in the hot sun. In southern Africa, these basins of interior drainage are called pans. Pans are often surrounded by water holes that attract animals during the dry season. Africa is the only continent that is crossed by the equator, the Tropic of Cancer, and the Tropic of Capricorn. Approximately 77% of the continent lies within the tropics. Africa's northern and southernmost regions lie adjacent to the tropics in what geographers call the subtropics. Because of Africa's location, the same climate regions mirror each other north and south of the equator. Low elevation lands along the equator are always hot and humid. They receive plenty of rain throughout the year. The natural vegetation in these regions is usually a tropical rainforest made up of tall, broadleaf evergreen trees. These forests provide homes for chimpanzees and gorillas, as well as many other creatures. In recent years, much of the tropical forest has been cleared so that the land can be used to grow crops. Food crops that do well in such a hot, wet climate include cassava, which is a plant with an edible root. Many kinds of bananas are also grown for food. Cacao trees are grown commercially in large plantations. These trees grow pods that are full of beans, from which chocolate is made. In many areas, new farm plots must be cut from the forest every few years. This method of farming is called shifting cultivation. It has been done here for thousands of years. The equatorial rainforest zone is surrounded by an area that has very distinct wet and dry seasons. In these wet, dry, tropical climates, the vegetation turns green during the summer rainy season. North of the equator, the summer months are June, July, and August. South of the equator, the seasons are reversed, so June, July, and August are the winter months. Natural vegetation in the wet, dry climates consists of open woodlands, grasslands, and savannas. A savanna is a grassy area with scattered trees. Different types of savannas are named after the trees that grow on them. For example, baobab savannas are marked by wide-trunked baobab trees. Palm savannas are characterized by palm trees, and acacia savannas are dotted with acacia trees. Many trees that grow in the woodlands and savannas begin to lose their leaves after the rains stop. During the dry season, the branches of the baobab tree are completely bare. This curious tree is sometimes called the upside-down tree because its barren branches look like roots. Another unique sight in these regions are termite mounds that come in many different shapes and reach amazing heights. As many as 3 million termites may live in a large mound, such as this one in West Africa. Many of Africa's most famous nature reserves and national parks are found in the wet, dry, tropical regions. In these vast parks, wildlife populations, such as these wildebeest, are protected from hunters and poachers. This is the famous wildebeest migration in Kenya's Masai Mara National Park. Wild animals, especially elephants, have a major impact on African vegetation. However, the vegetation is also affected by altitude, type of soil, availability of water, and use by farmers and their livestock. The savanna landscape is periodically affected by fires. These fires burn woody shrubs and dead grass and make it easier for new grass to grow. Fires like this have burned frequently for thousands of years and are important for maintaining healthy savanna ecosystems. Often, the fires are deliberately set by farmers and herders to make the land more productive. Many of the more fertile lands in this zone are used to grow crops. Sorghum is an important food crop. So is millet. Both of these drought-resistant grains originated in Africa. Corn, which was brought to Africa from the Americas, is another important food crop. Rice is grown where there is enough water. During the rainy season, it is planted in the Niger River's inland delta area. As you can see in this West African market, many root crops, such as sweet potatoes, are raised and sold for food. Great quantities of peanuts are also grown in West Africa. These Senegalese women are preparing peanuts for market. The wind blows away any unwanted dead plant material that was harvested with the peanut pods. Cotton is grown as a cash crop. It is a leading export from many West African countries. Sugarcane is cultivated where there is enough water. Like rice, this valuable plant was brought to Africa from southern Asia. A semi-arid zone lies between the wet-dry climate of the savannas and the true deserts. Regions with this semi-arid climate include the Kalahari, located in Botswana and Namibia, the Great Karoo of South Africa, and the Sahel, which lies south of the Sahara Desert. Another semi-arid region is found north of the Sahara. The dry season is very long in these areas, and the natural vegetation can survive for long periods without water. Trees are found along streams, but most of the land is covered with thorny shrubs and drought-resistant grasses. Many plants can store moisture in their spongy tissues. During the winter months, skies are always gray in the Sahel because of the Harmattan winds that blow dust southward from the Sahara Desert. Growing crops in the semi-arid regions is only practical where there is enough water for irrigation, so livestock herding is the main way of making a living. Over the past few decades, deep wells have been drilled to create more water holes for livestock. As flocks and herds have increased in size, overgrazing has become a problem near these water holes. Extensive deforestation in Africa's semi-arid regions has been caused by a growing demand for firewood. In years when rains fail to come, drought grips the land, and desert conditions expand into the semi-arid zone. This process of desertification is very difficult to reverse, even when rainfall returns to normal. Across North Africa and in southwestern Africa, the semi-arid zones give way to true deserts that have almost no rainfall and very little vegetation. Much of the desert's surface is covered with a layer of small stones that are left behind when the sand and dust are blown away by the wind. These dunes in southwestern Africa's Namib Desert are among the highest on Earth. The few plants and animals which live in these deserts have developed ways to survive under extremely dry conditions. Agriculture is only possible where there is enough water for irrigation, as in Egypt's Nile Valley. Elsewhere, date palms are grown in scattered oases, where springs are fed by underground water lying close to the Earth's surface. The northwestern and southern parts of Africa have subtropical climates. These areas get enough rainfall for farming. Southeastern Africa has a mild, humid climate, much like that found in the southeastern United States. The natural vegetation here is subtropical forest, but most of the original forest has been replaced by plantations of pines and other fast-growing trees. This region is also suitable for growing many types of crops. Africa's most northwestern and southwestern points have a Mediterranean-type climate with mild rainy winters and hot dry summers. These regions have their own distinctive types of natural vegetation. Crops, such as olives and grapes, grow well in this type of climate. Africa is the second largest continent on Earth. It lies mostly within the tropics. Much of the African interior is a relatively flat plateau, but the continent has great diversity in climate, vegetation, and wildlife. Tropical rainforests are found along the equator. These rainforests are surrounded by a zone of woodlands and savannas that have distinct wet and dry seasons. Further from the equator, semi-arid lands border very dry deserts. Regions with pleasant subtropical climates are found on the continent's northwest and southern margins. Because of its rainforests, deserts, and semi-arid regions, Africa has relatively little good farmland for such a large area. In addition, parts of the continent are plagued by frequent droughts. Demand for firewood and the need to use marginal lands for grazing and crop production have led to deforestation and desertification. This further reduces the amount of land that can profitably be used for farming or grazing livestock. However, many kinds of crops are well suited to Africa's varied climates, and new, drought-resistant strains are being developed. The continent still has vast mineral resources and is especially rich in its fantastic variety of wildlife. Tourists, who are attracted to Africa's many national parks and game reserves, provide a much-needed source of revenue for many countries. As Africans and visitors from other lands establish new friendships, perhaps a foundation can be laid for a greater world interest in developing Africa's resources for the mutual benefit of all.